In an era characterized by relentless demands, ever increasing workload, and the perpetual pursuit of success, the toll on our mental well being has never been more pronounced. It's a phenomenon that transcends industries, affecting professionals from all walks of life. Welcome to a world where the lines between work and life are completely blurred, and one where burnout has become a disconcertingly common companion. So, today we're going to dive into a topic that affects nearly all of us at some point in our life: stress and its intimate relationship with burnout. Stress is a word we hear all too often, isn't it? Whether it's due to work pressures, personal challenges, or the demands of our modern fast paced lives, stress is a constant companion. But what does it have to do with burnout? Let's find out. Before we jump into today's podcast, remember to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you can stay up to date with the latest banter. Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff.
And I'm Rochelle.
And this is Burnout Banter. So, Rochelle, what do you think makes the construction industry so stressful?
Ooh, this is a really interesting industry because there are so many demands on it from like field to office. So, I mean, we could be looking at, your boots on the ground construction is kind of a labor intensive, physically demanding uh, role. And then when you hit the office, you've got stress of project deadlines and internal responsibilities and people dynamics, and the economy right now is insane, so that's an added stressor to everybody. So those are the things that come top of mind to me when I think about stress in the industry.
Yeah, I would agree. And also people in the field are doing things that at times can be very unsafe, right? If they're not following safety protocols and things like that. And
Even if they are,
if they are,
my
yeah,
dad's in construction. He has fallen off of scaffolding while clipped in. That was terrifying when I was a kid. So yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
rough.
always I always think back to the famous pictures of the people building like the Empire State Building, sitting up there eating their lunch, not strapped in at all, so
Not
high.
a care in the world.
Yeah,
Walking across those I-beams like it's nothing. Crazy.
yeah, yeah. So I think those are some of the common things. You know, about deadlines. So many tight deadlines, and now we have financial stressors, and are we able to get work product, and are we going to get it in time? We deal with that a lot on the electrical side of, hey, I can get this piece of equipment, but I can't get this piece of equipment that you specified. Can we swap them out? And so yeah, everybody seems to be scrambling to try to meet deadlines.
Those have leaked over into my proposal realm. Like when I have to talk about what are challenges or what are things that we need to think about for this project, everybody, architects to engineers to contractors, they're like, hey, make sure that we talk about materials and availability and lead times. And like, hey, by the way, the client has a 12-month construction time frame for this. And the mechanical equipment has a 14-month lead time. So we kind of need to order it in design. That stresses everybody out. It stresses me out, and I don't even have to deal with it. So things are just wild right now.
We had a project recently where we had to order the electrical switchgear way ahead of time, and we had to make everything adjustable because we were so early in design that we had no idea what the final settings on breakers and things would be. So everything was adjustable, which adds cost to the project, right? To buy more expensive stuff like that. But it was the only way we could deal with it.
I constantly ask, like, what does it mean if you have to order the equipment before the building has been designed? Like, if you can do that, what are you designing? It's so confusing to me on the marketing side, but
It means you're very conservative.
fair
And
enough.
you build in a lot of adjustability, I guess.
Well, I've used the word flexibility in the proposal I'm writing today on probably every page. So maybe that explains that.
Yeah. How about job insecurity, variable workloads, things like that? I mean, if you've been in this industry long enough, I go back to 2000. So there was a big dip, I think, in like 2003. Then there was 2008 and 2009. It's been a while since we've had a big dip, I think, since then. Um, but if you've been around this long enough, you know that what goes up must come down.
And say I started in 2009, and I remember there was a pretty significant hit, at least in the Albuquerque market, sometime around like 2011. Um, that took, I think some companies, quite honestly, are still recovering from that. Like some of our big companies cut their workforce in half, and they're still not up to what they were before. But yeah, we were talking recently about like just the global economic climate and how some like major, I think Chinese developers have folded or defaulted, and how that's going to severely impact even stuff locally. And like, what is that? For me, that means that marketing is going to go insane because it's on us to make sure that everybody stays employed, but also everybody's going to start panicking and looking at, where can we tighten belts? And that's really scary for job security.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and then that doesn't even talk to, right, the firms that kind of staff up and staff down based on project workload, right? So that creates a lot of instability for people or stress.
exactly. Yeah. If you don't know if you're going to be around because your project is closing out, like, I can't imagine that. But
I'm
I
gonna
think you communicate with your people.
Yeah, I'm not gonna name names, but I've had several friends who have worked for a bigger company.
Hmm.
Most of us will probably have heard of. But if you were not advocating for your next job, right? So if you see yours is coming to a close, you have to be the one out there advocating, selling yourself for the next project. Because if you sit around for a week or two without being billable, you're done.
Ooh.
That can be very stressful too.
On my end, I can kind of see that actually working to the proposal advantage in that those people would be very involved in their proposals to win new work.
Yes, they would.
So I know that's a negative, and I don't want anybody to feel that stress, but we should all approach proposals as if our job depended on it because it kind of does.
It does actually. Yeah, very true. And then, I think some other big areas, right? The legal aspect of what we're doing has become a lot more prevalent lately, which impacts communication and teamwork and things like that because everybody's trying to protect themselves. So,
Right. Yeah, especially going back to that like materials thing and like scheduling and budget. I don't think it's quite, I think it's mellowed a little bit, but the last couple of years, it seems like clients have been very litigious in coming at their designers for, hey, you've blown through our schedule and hey, you went over budget, you didn't let us know. But it's like we couldn't know. We couldn't know what the next material shortage was going to be. So now it's a ton of CYA, protect yourself stuff, starting in marketing and proposals,
yeah.
carrying through.
So I don't think we're breaking new ground here and stating that the construction industry is stressful, but it is. And
We're validating.
yes, we are validating. That's a good word for it.
Thank
So
you.
if it is stressful, let's talk a little bit more about stress. Do you see stress as good or bad?
I think a small amount of stress can be healthy. Uh, I, as a chronic procrastinator, kind of thrive on that stress that I create for myself to like really work towards something. But when that stress starts to build up and it's constantly weighing on you, I think that becomes a huge issue. And that's where I think most of the industry is at. Like we just have so many constant stressors affecting us that it's no longer just that one little thing that like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's just weighing you down always. That's a problem.
Yeah, that is the problem. It's a little bit of both actually. Um,
Okay.
what's
Tell me
what's
more.
what's something good you've accomplished in the recent past, or it doesn't even have to be in the recent past, but something you were really proud of doing. I'm putting
In
her on
general or under stress?
in general. In general.
Let's see. Last year, I finally finished my first book ever, which is something I've been wanting to do for my whole life. So,
It's cool.
yeah.
And so how when times got tough and you didn't want to write, how did you motivate yourself?
I had so many tricks to like get my brain into gear. So like I was tracking word count per day and I would get really irritated if I was under word count because I wouldn't get to put like a check mark. And so I would break my chain of continuity. It's like that mental thing where you just see the X's on the calendar and you're like, yeah, I'm building a habit. And if I broke that, uh, you'd be disincentivized. But also, I just kept so many notes on like the things that I wanted to see happen and unfold. And of course, I kind of had like in the back of my head this big vision of like finally being published and how exciting that would be. And that's what kept things going when I really got bogged down and was like, I've written myself into a corner. Now what do I do?
So if you didn't have any stress, right, it's really easy to just set it to the side,
hmm
not do anything. So you created some stress in order to help you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish.
I I suppose I did with that, uh, especially the habit building, the chain linking on the calendar was definitely stressful. Like if I didn't write 1,000 words,
In a good way, right? Because it was more motivational than it was.
yeah,
Shame on you for not doing this. Maybe that's
exactly. Nobody was gonna fault me for not finishing my book. I've never done it before, but you know, that
yeah, but like
drive to do it.
starting a new job or starting your company, right? Like there's some excitement around those things
hmm
going on.
Absolutely.
You know, learning a new subject, right? That's all stress that is good stress. It's called eustress.
You like YOU stress or
You eustress.
You stress. Okay. Just so I can, let our listeners Google that if they so wish.
Yeah. So a lot of the great things that we accomplish in life are done under stress. So it can be very good. It can also be, as you mentioned, very bad. That's distress. So there are a couple different types of distress. So have you ever been pulled over by the police?
I have.
Yes. Do you get butterflies in your stomach and
I
you
panic if I
know
see a cop on the road. Even if I've done nothing wrong, I don't, it's just that like potential, what if I was speeding and I didn't realize it?
yeah, yeah. So that feeling is there temporarily, and then as soon as the stressful situation is over, it goes away. So
Okay. So this feels
that's
like,
right because we did something wrong potentially. Um, but it's more acute, right? Like it goes away, and then we don't experience that anymore.
okay. Okay.
If we stay in those types of situations um, at pretty regular intervals throughout the day, that becomes episodic. So where we're constantly or more we're more in that state than we're not in that state
Okay.
for us. And then if we're in it all the time, it becomes chronic.
I can see proposals escalating from acute, like if I just finish this proposal and I turn it in, I can relax, very quickly turning episodic and then chronic depending on workload. And I imagine it works the same way for project deadlines and demands for the rest of the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And even when we do get a chance to rest in the industry, most of us now start worrying about our job security, right? If I don't stay
Yeah.
busy or appear busy, I'm going to lose my job. So we now, even though we had a chance to rest, have ruined it by worrying about what's going to happen if we do actually rest.
Yes, I've been trying to clear up some time to take vacation, and I told myself I would say no to new proposals within this period of time. And immediately when I got a new one, I was like, of course I can take that on because of course I have to like pay bills. Like, no, I will be fine if I say no to one proposal. But that fear is terrifying. And in-house, it's, you turn down you can't turn down work as an in-house marketer, but if you were to be in that position, you would definitely be concerned about whether you'd be replaced pretty quickly. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but even as an engineer too, right? Like I finish a project, I have a utilization target. If I don't have the next project ready to go, now I'm very worried about what, even if my utilization while I was finishing the project was super high, and now it's going to be low for a little bit. I'm so worried about it being low for a little bit that I create this whole stressful situation for myself where I don't get a rest and recover anyways.
Why have we done this to ourselves? Like humans are not machines. We cannot run constant. Even machines, as someone pointed out to me recently, can't run constantly. You have to shut your computer down once in a while, or it just like implodes on itself.
Yes.
Why do we? I mean, this is a bigger discussion, but like that that drive to constantly be in motion is exhausting. And it, like you said, it means you can never rest. It means you can never fully recover from any period of stress. Ugh. That explains my burnout, I think.
Yeah, and
Or
that's
are
what
you going to connect those for me? This
yeah,
stress
so
and
if,
burnout.
if we are in episodic or constant stress and don't rest, then we burn out. So that's, stress is the trigger for burnout.
Got
Now,
it.
what's interesting about stress, right, is there's all this stress in the industry, which we can try to solve. Um, and we're working on it every day. But they're big picture issues that are going to take a while to resolve or work through or take big industry change. And then there is stress that we put on ourselves. So when you combine those two, that's where I don't think we ever really get a chance to rest because we don't have as much control over the stress the industry puts on us, but we do have control over how much stress we're putting ourselves under.
I mean, we could choose to leave the industry, which many people on my side of the fence are doing in droves, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
But can you talk more about that, like the load our stress, like our personal stress puts on us, and like how we bring that and how we don't deal with it or how we're not dealing with it?
Yeah, so, fear wants us to stay in our comfort zone. So it's going to create stress in our life because if there's stress, we're less likely to take action. So I don't know that we've ever talked about the four no's of fear here, but our expectations, our complaining, our negative self-talk, and our excuses, all fear uses them to create stress in our life. And when it creates
Okay.
stress in our life around those four things, we if we have expectations about how something's going to go, we're trying to figure out how we can avoid this outcome when we don't really know what the outcome is. And that creates stress, right? We're constantly trying to work through how do I control this so that this bad thing that I think is going to happen doesn't happen. Or if I complain and I'm getting validation that, yeah, the situation you're in sucks, it's like, oh, great. What do I do now? Like, this sucks. Everybody agrees with me. I have no, I have no control over it. So that's going to create stress. Or if I'm telling myself that I'm not good enough, or I have this negative self-talk running in my mind, um, I don't think I can deal with what's going on, and that creates stress. Or if I have excuses as to why things aren't working out, I don't have enough time, you know, then that creates stress too. So all those things fear uses against us create stress in our lives. We can't
Sweet.
control all of that.
Right. We cannot put ourselves in a stress echo chamber, is what I'm hearing.
No, and I don't think it's good for you either, because if we're in a situation where there's no stress in our life, we're accomplishing nothing. Like we're in the epitome of our comfort zone, right? Like that's nothing's changing, there's nothing new happening. We're just existing every day. And I don't think that's a good place for us to be either.
True. I don't know. I could handle some like zero thinking, zero stress, just existing time right now, but maybe that's the burnout talking.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. If we need rest, yes, rest, that's important. But even I think about, oh, it'd be great to have like 6 weeks off to play video games. I guarantee you at the end of 6 weeks, I would be pulling my hair out, bored out of my mind that I'm just sitting here playing video games all day. So even last weekend when we had a long weekend, our kids were sick and my wife and I were starting to get in. We're like, we're just going to take it easy. And by Monday, I was like, I got to do something. I got to do something. So after 2 days of sitting around watching TV and whatever, I needed some stimulation. So
Understandable. I would argue that you can create stress in video games and keep that sustaining you, but
you could,
maybe that's just me. Looping that back around. So if we let this stress build up, if we don't silence the complaining and the negative self-talk and the stress echo chamber that we have created, we burn out.
yeah,
And we know, go
yeah,
ahead.
we don't rest, right? And then we have this stressful situations at work that maybe we could typically deal with when we're not stressed out ourselves. But because we're stressed out ourselves, now these stressful situations at work throw us over the top, and burnout is the result of that.
Awesome. And we all know that when we're burnt out, we start to disengage.
Yeah, we
We, yeah, yeah, we just disconnect and emotionally shut down. And you can't, it's really hard to come back from that in the workplace once you've hit that point.
Yeah, so stress preps our body to deal with challenges that we're facing. But if we don't give our body a chance to recover, then we cannot continue to deal with the challenges that are put in front of us.
And this industry puts a lot of challenges in front of us. So we need to constantly be recovering from the last one to be ready for the next one.
Yeah, we think macroly. I don't even know what the word is, right? But from a macro perspective, uh, we all think vacation is the chance to rest and recover, but it doesn't really have to be that big of a thing. We can build rest and recovery into our day too.
I think we have to. One, vacations are lovely, but they're also kind of exhausting. Like
It
I
depends on what kind of a vacation it is.
even just like chilling on the beach for 2 days, I feel like when I get back, I still need a day to recover from that. Like I need to do all of the laundry and like get mentally back into normal mode. I don't know. There's something about vacation that like I need a vacation from my vacation to like reset back into real life. But yeah, no, I think normal life maintenance is even more important than taking a full like week or 2 week step back because we're talking about incremental building of stress in your life. I feel like the only way to combat that is to have incremental buildup of rest,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Vacations are band-aids,
yeah,
nice band-aids, but band-aids.
yeah. And when you add a family component to the vacation, then it becomes maybe even less restful than sometimes I'm excited to go back to work because that's less stressful than a family vacation can be at times. So
Oh no. Yeah, but like coordinating people's opinions and what do you want to do today and what are we going to eat? Yeah, like planning everything.
yeah,
A staycation all the way.
yeah.
No decisions. DoorDash, it's great.
Yeah, so the more we stress, the more we burn out, then we start to become exhausted, right? So there's this emotional mental drain on us. And as we become exhausted, we're less able to even more so cope with what's going on than we were before. Our work performance starts to suffer, right? If we're burned out, which creates more stress, right? When are they going to notice that I'm not performing at the level that I was.
Or when they do notice and they talk to you about it and you get hit with like a performance improvement plan or something instead of like actual support to help you alleviate the stress and reverse your burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, we lose motivation, we lose passion, which again, right, when are people going to notice? Uh, we're judging ourselves the whole time too. So yeah, it can become this really vicious cycle where they kind of feed on top of each other. The stress creates the burnout, which creates more stress, which leads to more burnout. And, if we don't do something to break the cycle, it can really take us down or knock us out till our body eventually shuts down, or tells us enough.
And that results in you sleeping 14 to 16 hours a day, which is great for no one. How do we combat that? Like, how do we talk a lot, obviously, about burnout since it's Burnout Banter. But how do we deal with the stress before it becomes burnout?
Yeah. So I think a couple things is to be aware of the way you're creating stress in your life. So is most of the stress external or is a lot of the stress internal? I think that can be a good exercise to go through and start to see where the stress is coming from. Once we've identified the stress, then there's something called the 4 A's of stress management. So we can avoid it. We can
Okay.
alter the stressful situation. We can accept it, or we can adapt to it.
I don't want to accept my stress.
But you can, right? If I'm trying to think of a good example of that. If we accept that something is the way that it is, and it's not possible to change it, our level of stress actually does decrease around that. Or if I accept the situation that I'm in, um, our level of stress actually goes down. We stop fighting. I can't believe this happened to me. Why me? Um, those types of thoughts that create stress. And when we get to the point of, okay, I'm here now, then we can actually deal with it in a less stressful way, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm going back to the classic marketer, this is how we've always done it argument that everyone throws at us when they're like, they don't actually want to do the work that we've asked them to do. And it's just so hard to accept that. So maybe it's just that I haven't done it or I refuse to do it, and that's why it still stresses me out. But there are certain situations where I just can't do that. So I guess that's when I need to alter or avoid those situations.
But even like if we accept where we're at, right, and that this is how it's going to be, or I can accept that I'm going to look for a new job while I deal with this, right? Like the stress of that situation that you were dealing with before does decrease.
Okay, no. So now I can accept the situation knowing that I will change it.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like I will
Yeah.
accept that my team is not going to change how they think about things, but I am accepting that because I will no longer be working with this team.
Yeah, or I'm going to accept this that it's the way it is right now. That doesn't mean I have to keep it that way. I can still work to
Okay.
change it going forward, but how it is right now is how it is. And I think that level of awareness in our lives does actually reduce stress.
I'm clearly not good at stress management, which is why I'm struggling with all of these. My brain is just like, no, we can't do that. We're just going to keep fighting and like keep stressing, and that's how we work. That's how we function.
Example of this, Rhonda, I'll steal from Rhonda Britton because she has a good example of this. So she has an uncle who's very different politically than she is. And so anytime she would visit her uncle, they would get into these little arguments or it would really stress her out that this is how he believes. things should be. And so she got to the point where it's like, okay, well, this is causing so much stress that I really don't want to be around this person. But that contradicts my values of family, and I want to have this person around in my life. So I have to accept that they are going to believe this, and I'm not going to change their mind. And once she accepted that, now they could interact, and kind of that those situations are off the table, right? So I'm not going to let that bother me. He is how he is. I'm not going to change him. I don't know how old he was, but pretty old. Um, and it just the stress of those interactions totally went away.
Fair. It still just feels uncomfortable to me in that no change happened between them. Like, how do I want to articulate this? Like, the problem was still there. They just chose not to acknowledge the difference of opinion. I feel like that's really difficult to do in the
They chose
workplace.
to set it aside.
Just to set it aside. If you set things aside in proposals, they never get fixed. This is why I'm still dealing with the same problems in 2023 that I was dealing with in 2009.
Right. No, I get that. And so accept may not be your go-to thing, but it can reduce your stress if you're in a stressful situation.
I I will practice acceptance of my stressors.
People who get diseases and things like that, right? You can fight and why'd that happen to me, or you can accept that I now have this and now you can deal with it going forward. It doesn't mean you've accepted that you're going to die necessarily, right? But you've accepted that this is where I am and now I can start to work through it. Whereas if you're still stuck in, I can't believe this happened to me, that's so stressful.
So I need to change my perspective on accept. It's a stepping stone, not a solution in itself.
Correct.
Is that maybe
Yes.
a better way to approach that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or there may not be a solution, right? With Rhonda and her uncle, there wasn't a solution. They just accepted to set that aside and continue to have a relationship that they wanted to both have. They were never going to convince each other that they were wrong. They were that far apart.
Right. Again, I'm putting that in my like proposal team scenario in my head. And I just refuse to accept that we are never going to see eye to eye on things. So sorry.
That
I
stress
really have to work on that one.
Does that stress you out to think of it that way?
It does. I'm stressed about this one little word is really it's getting me. But that's okay. I have work to do on it. I need to think about it. I will come back and maybe be less stressed about it once I've practiced.
Yeah, and sometimes we may be able to do any one of the four of these things, and sometimes there may be only one that is even an option for us. But when you think about being in fear, fear doesn't want you to do any of those things because avoiding, altering, accepting, or adapting essentially means you're settling, or you're trying not to settle for what it is, right? And what it is what's known. That's what's comfortable. So it's very hard to do any of those four things when we're in fear, which you may be right now. And
Probably.
that's the word.
I am afraid if I accept a situation as it is that I don't like, it's never going to change. I think that's where I'm at.
But are you going to change the situation? Maybe in some cases you're not going to either.
That also scares me and stresses me out. That I won't try, that I won't be able to do it.
Yeah, but if you accept that that's just how it is, then there's no more stress around it. When you're fighting that you can't change it, that's where the stress comes.
Hmm. All right. All right. I will stop fighting it, or I will try to stop fighting it and stop coming at it from a place of fear. It's not going to happen in one podcast episode. Hate to break it to you.
Okay.
It's going to take a while. I have 14 years of institutional stress to work through.
But so does everybody else, right? So I think that's a great example of what gets in our way when we talk about trying to fix some of these things, is that we all get into fear and now nothing's possible because we all can't get to this place where we compromise or adjust or do any of that stuff. And things stay the way they are.
The- We all know how I feel about the way they are, the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right.
So that's the relationship between stress and burnout.
And now it's time for burning questions.
All right. So our burning question comes from a marketing coordinator that works for a medium-sized architectural firm. Right now, I feel like I have to say yes to my boss when they ask me to do something, even if my workload is already full. Help.
Oh dear. I feel like I used this as an example earlier in the episode, where you feel like you can't say no as a marketer to something because if you do, you're perceived as unhelpful, not a team player, and are rocketed up the list for chopping block in the future.
Which we learned from Jen in our one of our previous episodes, that you can say no. You just have to say it in the proper way.
Yes, which does not actually involve the word no. So I feel like this is a common question and one that I frequently answer with communication, communication, communication. Uh, it's very likely that your boss, so I'm thinking medium-sized architectural firm, you might have a marketing director or you might be reporting like directly to a principal. And if you're reporting directly to a principal or a technical staff member who doesn't have a full understanding of like what proposals look like or what marketing looks like, you need to talk to them and explain like what goes into each of your tasks and how much additional workload and time investment this task is going to take and how it's going to put you over. And you might need to talk to them about, okay, if I take on this additional task, I need to shuffle something else off because I'm not going to be able to complete them all at the level of quality that you are going to be satisfied with. It's very much, I think, as marketers, we assume everybody knows what we do. I feel like technical staff do this too. You assume that we know what you do.
Right.
And so we just don't talk to each other about what we're actually doing.
Assuming never leads anywhere good, does it?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just had this conversation with our marketing staff in-house. I want to understand the why. If you're asking me to do something that's going to create stress in my life or, cause me to work extra or something like that, and there is a good reason for it, I'm much more likely to accept that and put in the extra effort than I am if I don't feel like the question was ever asked, or if I don't feel like they're standing up for me and my team.
That's completely valid. I will speak for my marketers. I feel like we are not always great at articulating the why, especially to our technical staff when we say things like, can you write a technical approach or can you do a write up on this project because we don't have one yet? To us, we know exactly why we need it. We know exactly how we're going to use it. But to you, we need to articulate why we can't use the like standard language from the last proposal that walks you through programming all the way to like construction closeout, or why I can't just go into the project documentation and read it and understand what I'm looking at and magically write a project approach.
Yeah, but I'm
So
even more basic than that, right? If so, here's the deadline for this thing. The client has set the deadline, it's not negotiable. I need X amount of time to do what I do with it. Like you and I have talked about, right? I didn't know you went in and changed the way I write. It's okay because I'm probably not a writer, but I have no idea that that's even happening. I don't know how long that takes. So when I do know that that's happening and I do know that it's going to take some time, I'm now much more likely to put the extra effort in. Am I saying everybody's going to be more likely to put the extra effort in? No. If they're burned out, especially not. But if I understand why I'm being asked to do something, I'm much more likely to do it than not. If there's a good
That's
answer to that question.
That's fair. I was going more like why I need you specifically. I try to make everybody I make an ask of feel special because they are like things live in their head that I can't get to, or they have a skill set that I do not have, which is why I'm asking them to do something. And I think that's applicable across the industry, whether you're asking like your project engineer to do something or your superintendent to do something. But yeah, like also inviting questions, do you understand the assignment? Do you understand why I'm asking this of you? Can also help us break out of our window, like our very narrow view of why we're doing things and how we're doing them.
Yeah. I had a recent example where I've been aware that this thing was going to happen since June. It happened last Friday, and they needed something by this Thursday. So 4-day turnaround on something that they've been working on since June. I really struggle with that right now. Why is this my problem? And why does our team have to kill ourselves because all this time was wasted? Now it has to happen. But once I heard why, I was more accepting of the ask. I still don't think it was right, but I can appreciate why we're in the position we're in.
The proposal example for that is we now have a week to put this together because you didn't make a decision on whether we were going to go after it for 2 weeks. So we lost 2 weeks of working on this. So there's like a very delicate dance between the why are we in this situation? It's kind of your fault. I'm sorry. And also, can you help me out here? Which again goes back to communication. Like we need to be checking in and saying, is this a go? Are we going to do this? If you can see that there's potentially going to be additional tasks that are going to be added to your workload, like be a little proactive about it. I noticed that we have a conference on the calendar in 6 months. Do you need me to put together collateral for that? Are we going to have social posts around it? Do I need to do newsletters? That'll help you kind of plan for the inevitable additional workload.
So when I read this question, and I'm sure your mind went to, I want to say no. So did mine. I think was what is going to happen if they say no? Where does our mind go with that?
So I go to retaliation because that's been my experience, unfortunately, with saying no. So I feel like that's a common thing. They don't feel like they can say no. I mean, they said it. I feel like I have to say yes. And I think the flip side of that is I feel like I can't say no or I'm going to get in trouble, which is stressful.
Uh-huh. But when we keep ourselves in that environment, now we're going to burn out eventually. So we, again, right, to avoid or to alter, to accept or adapt. If I think I'm going to get in trouble, I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm not ever going to say no.
Right.
But we don't know if you're going to get in trouble. We think we do. And if you do get in trouble, I would go back to, okay, if you've given me a good reason why or not a good reason why, and now I'm getting in trouble for saying no when there wasn't a good reason, is this really the kind of environment I want to be in?
Absolutely. Fear brain is just really, really strong because fear brain is then saying, maybe you don't want to be in this environment, but what's out there for you? Right. And it's the evil, just say yes and add that extra task and figure out how to deal with it as opposed to potentially leaving or getting fired or having to find that new job.
Or can I
That's
have
scary.
a conversation about it, right?
Yeah.
No, and here's why, but what can we do different next time? Or right, we can have these tougher conversations. I don't even want to call them difficult because fear makes them difficult. They're not really difficult unless both people are in fear. But when we're
Right.
in, it's hard to have a conversation and figure out a different solution.
Absolutely.
So nobody has to say yes. Fear wants us to say yes all the time.
I feel like we're just conditioned, industry wide, conditioned to say yes. I run into architects all the time who are like, what do you mean you put me in that proposal? I'm like, I'm over capacity. If we get this project, I'm gonna die. But they complain to me, not to people who actually have staffing power, because they're also conditioned to just say yes to whatever comes at them. So
But we also don't know that we're going to die, right? Because the project could go on hold, it could slide. We get so far ahead of ourselves that we don't just deal with what's going on in the moment. Where
yeah, it
there's
could take 6 months for the contract to show up.
yeah,
And then your other project's the first step.
right? The moment I know what's in front of me. In the future, I don't know what's in front of me, which creates stress, and so then we never rest because we're so worried about what's going to happen in the future.
Exactly. We can't control the future. We can say no.
If we do it well.
If we do it well, it usually doesn't sound like no. It usually sounds like I would be happy to help you with that. However,
Yeah, so
not my expertise
I
or
think I think the idea of having a conversation around, okay, these are the things I have to do. What will help me prioritize, right? If I do this, then I can't get to this, or you're the one who's asking me to do all these things. Help me prioritize because I can't do it all.
I think it's a hugely powerful conversation. I also think it goes back to educating on what exactly is involved in all of those tasks. Could you tell me how much time it would take me to like put together social posts for the month of September for an architectural firm?
Are you asking me that question?
I'm asking you that question as my,
It'll take
as the leader of a firm.
a long time.
You have actual experience putting together social posts. That's cheating. Most of my clients have no idea. They think that like I just magically am a millennial and can create these things. Or now they think that I can just like ask ChatGPT to do these things for me. And I'm like, no. Ask ChatGPT to write a LinkedIn post for you and tell me if you like it.
So did we answer the burning question? What do you think?
I think we did. Communicate. Don't be afraid to say no.
And acknowledge yourself because it's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you may not get what you want either, but you will get data, as we always talk about, and data
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Feedback for future conversations.
Yeah.
Good luck, marketer. We feel you.
So, as a friendly reminder to all our listeners, if you're having a burning question, you can email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. Please, again, remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure you never miss an episode. Until next time,
See ya.
see ya.